So you might have just built a sweet new gaming rig for 2016, but you're still using a crusty old keyboard. Well, fear not, I got something sexy for your hands to play with during those long gaming sessions. How about we take a look at the Logitech G710. So this is my Logitech G710. I think I got it from Best Buy for about $70 or $80 about 7 months ago, and I've really been enjoying it. And you can see here that it's all lit up right now. It's got illuminated backlighted keys and all kinds of fun stuff like that. Alrighty, so before I get into my personal opinions about this, let's go ahead and read off the back of the box. Right here we have 110 key anti-ghosting, followed up by 26 key rollover. What does that mean? Basically, it means you can press all the keys on the keyboard that your hands can press, and it'll all be picked up. But a better way to understand that is to see it. All right, so if I press a key on my keyboard, it's gonna light up on this graph behind here. So more or less it's explaining what ghosting or rollover and all that fun stuff is. More or less it's how many keys you can press at once. I mean, that's really what it boils down to. So 26 key roll off, if I just kind of hammer at it. So say we're WASD and shifting, so we're sprinting and then we crouch and then we start throwing a grenade and, you know, whatever you got to do, whatever yoga your fingers got to do, it's just going to pick it all up at once. I mean, here we go. We're just going to put both hands on it and smash down all those keys. And look at it. I mean, it's just picking it all up. I actually counted it out once, and there's 28 lights that are showing up there. But one thing is the Windows key. That is also something off of the back of the box here, by the way, is gaming/desktop mode and also dedicated media controls. So there's the button you can press, and what that's going to do is disable your Windows key, which, there we go. I turned it off now, but you saw how that one, this little light over here, we're seeing that one, right? When that is on, you can't press the Windows key, so you can't accidentally fire that up, although then you can press Windows. There you go. That's more or less what they mean by that. The media controllers over here more or less work with Microsoft Media Player, right? They don't really work too well with the other things. I mean, they kind of work, but these buttons aren't really fast forward, so you more or less have pause and stop. I've never used them, just to put it out there. So back to the ghosting thing, though. We have all of this stuff that we can start putting on there. Whoa, hello, making everything show up, and that works pretty good. But let's give it a comparison to my old crusty keyboard here. So let me move this out of the way for you and put in my Z-board. I played with this for years, absolute years, but we'll see the difference here on the screen in front of us. So if I press down 3 keys, it picks it up. If I press 3 more, I can't get them all. I can get 5, but okay. There, I can't pick up J. Now H. You see what I'm talking about? You can't register all those keys all at the same time. This is older tech. Even though it is a gaming keyboard from the old days, it just doesn't pick up as many commands. So there are definite times where you simply end up like in a gaming situation where you go to throw a grenade or something like that. So you're pressing W-A, and you're like shifting, and then you're crouching and rolling on the ground, and you go to throw the grenade. And sometimes I would get into a position where I'd go to throw the grenade, but I wouldn't have the keys because I'd run out of ghosting. Although it's slightly unlikely, it does happen rarely. So that's what all of that technical jargon is about. More or less means you no longer have limitations, or your limitations are so much that you just simply can't do it with 2 hands. I mean, unless you're just playing like this, you know? So back to the back of the box here, we also have programmable keys. So you can see these over on the left-hand side here. These are your programmable keys, and then you have different sets of them. So you got your M1 sets, which are your first macro set, your second macro set, and then third macro set, and then this one is the button you press to start recording. So more or less you would press this button. Now you start recording, you say which key do you want to assign. Boom, you start doing that, it flashes, and now you press whatever keys you want to press, and then you hit that macro button again, and then if you play it, it actually plays it back. So that covers the back of the box. However, one important factor is what type of keys are these? These are the Cherry MX Brown keys. So they have a tactile feel, so when you actually press the key down on it, you'll see there's a little bit of resistance, and then it kind of clicks over. It's kind of hard to feel. It takes a little bit getting used to, but you'll notice that it it hesitates just a little bit and then kind of falls down, and that's when the key activates rather than at the very bottom of the key. So you can feel it a little bit. However, the browns are known for being very, very silent. So they're not clicky switches, which is very, very nice if you like a nice silent gaming. And for me, being somebody who records and somebody who doesn't like loud noises when it comes to keyboards, I love them. However, while these keys are the more silent mechanical keys, they are still very quite noticeable when it comes to, let's say, typing a letter or something like that. Pressing the shift button, the delete key. They do have a very kind of hard stop at the bottom, and they kind of spring back up, and they make a little noise when they spring back up. So if you were in an office, this would also still be quite noticeable. Or you could get it for your office if you want to make yourself sound a little bit more productive. However, they are definitely not anywhere close to those really clicky keys, which I ended up only being exposed to those either over the microphones with somebody else who's playing the game, or when I actually went to the store and tried out a Razer keyboard with the super clicky keys in them. They were definitely noisy, and they would pick up on my mic a lot. So I don't like the clickiness. I like the brown keys on them. And it will be also good to know that when you start pressing down on these keys, you can rest your hand on it, and you're not going to accidentally activate the keys. I mean, you can put your hand here and rest, and it's just fine. So there we go. We've covered the keys. We've also covered a little bit of the macro stuff. We're going to go into the software side of that a little bit later on. Let's talk about some of the ergonomics. Alrighty, so looking at this keyboard, this front piece right here is a little extra piece that comes with the keyboard, and it is a palm rest. However, you can take this off. It is detachable, so let me go ahead and show that. So there we have it. That's the keyboard here without that front palm rest. And if you have a nice like full mouse pad like I have here, you probably don't necessarily need that extra little wrist guard unless you like it for the ergonomic factor to it, because resting it right here and then putting your fingers on the keys is still a really good angle, and it's not too much pressure on your palm. So I think it's good either way. But when I didn't have this mouse pad, I definitely liked having this as an option. Now I can go either way. So when we come into the actual layout of the keys here, it almost looks a little bit dished. I mean, I'm not sure if it is, but it does seem a little bit higher here and then kind of curves down. I'm not 100% sure on all that, but I know it feels right. Although it is it's definitely a stretch to get to the F keys from where you're actually playing all the time. That is a stretch. Another thing I wanted to mention when it comes out to the layout of the keys, one thing I needed to get used to when I moved to this keyboard is it seemed like the spacing between the keys was a little bit larger than my previous keyboard. So it took a little bit of learning to actually find these keys, but I can understand why they're a little bit more spaced out, because it becomes very precise once you get used to it. So for a gaming aspect of it, the key layout just feels absolutely perfect, especially once you get used to it. Nothing ever stuck or has stuck, and you know, a little bit of pressure on the keyboard, on the space bar over here, activates it, even if you're like way over here, no problem at all. So you don't have any of that sort of missed space bar thing going on. Control is easily activated while using WASD and space at the same time. So that's beautiful. The ergonomic layout of it is great. So I would say if there's any weird part about the actual layout of this keyboard, it's got to be these 6 macro keys on the left-hand side here. They're just not really something natural, and they happen to just be far enough away to where your pinky has to know where it's going in order to get there. So I like that they grouped these in 2s, but at the same time, getting to G1 and G2 is practically impossible unless you just lift your hand up and start pressing it like this. Otherwise, I really don't ever bind anything to these keys. If I do, it is only to really G5 or G6, because I can kind of get to that with muscle memory. So if I haven't mentioned it already, there's also the mute button right here on your keyboard. That's going to mute your speakers, and this nice roller right here for the audio that moves it at 2 points per increment, and you can just infinitely scroll it just like you would on a mouse right here. So it just picks up a movement and then moves it up and down. Alrighty, so I pretty much covered the user interface of this keyboard, which is all the keys and stuff you press. However, there are a couple things that are still here. There is a USB port on the back side here. This is 2.0, and this giant cable right here runs off and actually has 2 separate USB cables plugins that you plug in. More or less, one of them runs the keyboard, the other runs straight to this port as just an extender. That's pretty handy. USB 2.0 though, so it's not 3.0. You're not going to get huge transfer rates, but it works well if you want to plug in something like a mouse or a flash drive or your cell phone or whatever. That's pretty much what I use that for. I use it all the time. It's actually one of my favorite features. The other thing is right here. You see where this is kind of notched out? If we flip it on over to the back side, you'll notice that there is this groove right here. And what this groove is used for is if you want to go ahead and put your headphone line to go through it. You can do something like that. So when you take that and then flip your keyboard back over, it has a place for it to run directly under your keyboard instead of around it. Now my line is too small to snap in there, so you kind of gotta just line it up. So there you have it. Now my headset here is going to run straight underneath my keyboard, and that is actually a pretty good place for it. I actually kind of like that. I've never used it till now. Mostly because my stuff plugs in somewhere else. And the front guard continues that same sort of notching deal, so even if I were to put this rest back on, the line would still continue to come out like right over here. So fancy, huh? And just so you guys understand, this is what the end of the cable looks like. It runs into this little yellow thing right here and then splits off into the two USB 2.0 attachment plugins. So this goes in your computer just like that, and you're good to go. But like I said, you only actually need to use one of these if you don't want to use your extended port. All right, so one last thing here is the Logitech gaming software. You will need to download this in order to activate it. And this is software that also includes a mouse if you happen to have the G610 or the other Logitech mice that I happen to have. So it does cover both of these products or any other of the products you have right here. So what you see here is the keyboard layout, and it gives you some sort of idea, which was the place marker. It ended up being the wrong key inside the game. And that just kind of goes to sum up my theory of these profiles that are kind of built into the game, or so we say into the software as it auto-detects this stuff, is that it's kind of an outdated database, and it really has never worked for me. So I don't get a lot of benefit out of this at all. However, one thing you can do is go ahead and go in here and edit a command, and you can actually start to record your own software. So I can start recording something and put in the different keys or add the different key commands and come up with some sort of macro that, like, I don't know, maybe in the game here was you can slide and then dash at the same time. So this part of the software kind of sort of works. You can kind of find some stuff here, but at the same time, to really set up your macro keys in such a way that it makes sense, you're going to kind of need to look at the controls in the game and figure out what you're going to want to put there. So I thought one good use for the macro keys inside of Warframe would be to actually simulate the movement that you do for traveling long distances. So you kind of sprint a little bit and then you slide and then you do a couple of jumps, and that's all kind of, it takes a lot of keys and you have to press it over and over again to really use it inside the game. So I thought I could make a macro for this. However, by the time I was done, the best I could come up with was some sort of dash roll thing that happens all at the same time. Even when I started to add some delays to it, it still didn't seem to function that well. You probably could get it to work, but it's again one of those things that you kind of have to mess around with for a long time, and it may not be as practical as actually just using the in-game controls. Another neat thing I found here was in Battlefield Hardline, there's a little option where you can turn on your Logitech lighting mode, and what that'll do is it'll flash the keyboard when you're taking damage. So it adds a little something, kind of like a aftermarket controller that has some LED lights in it that glow when the rumbles activate. Same sort of idea. At the end of the day, I really don't end up using these macro keys all that much. It just comes down to the fact that most games are designed to work on a standard keyboard and mouse, so you really just don't need extra keys. The only games that might come into play where you might want to macro things out are maybe games like Kerbal Space Program or Space or the Medieval Engineers game, which are so crazy complex. You're going to have to print out the controls anyhow just to memorize them. So if you're memorizing them, why does it really make sense to memorize them first, then put them onto a macro key, and then try to memorize the macro key, which is then connected to the key combination you need in the first place? It just becomes too elaborate, and you give up on it, and you just start to realize how to play the game the way it was meant to be played on a keyboard. Alrighty, so what else do we have as far as the software goes? We also have this heat map thing, which you can start and you can kind of view some stuff. So if you start typing or more or less pressing these keys, you can record and, you know, figure out what you're pressing. You have your keys per minute and what keys you're pressing most often. This is kind of cool the first time you use it, and then you really never touch it again. This is one of those neat things that are it's just kind of fun to see, I don't know, what you're pressing, and then you can switch between your press heat map and your duration. I mean, if this makes sense to you, and this is something you're looking for, then cool, it has it. For me, this is the second time I've really used it in any practical application. Your settings are the other things we also have here. We could run this program on Windows Startup, you know, blah, 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 stuff like that. You can use enhanced graphics, boom. But the only one that really makes sense here is the record delays during quick macro creation. So when we're actually doing the whole macro record, and then we press G or whatever we got, and then you press your keys, it's actually recording the delay from when you press this button. So when you stop that same delay will play, as opposed to when you do it without it, it just figures out what keys you have and presses those keys at the same time. So that's how that works out. All right, one last thing I wanted to show you guys on this keyboard is the obvious thing, the backlighting to it. It's all white light, no special colors come with this. And you have the two buttons up here at the top. So we have the WASD and the arrow keys, so you can see it right here as it's getting a little bit dimmer, and then it turns off. We have 5 different settings, including off, so 4 dims and then off. And then you can press the other button here, and that's going to control all of the rest of the keys. So you can turn the lights off completely, or if you turn it right back on, it goes all the way to bright, and then you set it down. I like to leave this on its dimmest setting. I use this during the daytime, and I also use this at night. It's not so bright that it's showing up in your peripheral vision and kind of blinding you, and it just really adds a nice feature to this, so you can really easily see the keys, especially if you're more of a visual typer like me. So let me sum up my thoughts here on the Logitech G710 Plus. I absolutely love this keyboard. It feels very special sitting in front of me. It doesn't move around on my desk, and it commands attention as it sits here in front of my gaming console. So it is one of those things that I just personally like, and it really is all about that. I don't think it's going to make you a better player just because you have this fancy keyboard. I mean, the mechanical keys are a slight step up, but I don't think it's going to make that much of a difference in the real world. The anti-ghosting thing is a nice feature to have. I like the USB a lot. The backlighting is another nice accessory to have, and that's what it really is, a very nice accessory to have. So if you're in the market for something sweet to put on your desk in front of you here, I don't really think you can go too wrong here with the Logitech G710 Plus. It's a very nice keyboard, and it's got some extra nice features to it. And you know what? It just commands attention when you come here, you sit down in front of it, and you start gaming away. So thanks for watching, guys. That is my review here of the Logitech G710 Plus. Hopefully you found it informative. If you did, maybe hit that like button up. If I steered you wrong in some way, maybe hit that button down. At any rate, though, thanks for watching, guys. And if I earned your subscription, then thank you so much for that. I'll see you next time, guys. Peace. Brothgar out.